We have a new series of talks, and it's entitled Vices and Virtues Talk Series. And we're starting off with pride versus humility. And with great honor, I'm really blessed to present our speakers tonight. One of the look upon couples, not to put pressure to them, but they're this very generous couple, very helpful. I mean, they're always been there. We've been developing that relationship for quite some time since joining their cell group or their upper cell group. Without further ado, brothers and sisters, let's all welcome our brother Philip and Mayette Casanova.
Good evening.
Hi, Philip. Hi, Mayette.
Brother Perk, thank you for the intro. Magandang gabi. Good evening, brothers and sisters, and happy to be here. We'll have the series of talks, no? Starting this week, and allow Mayat lang to share her screen. Give us a moment. Sabi ni Ana, couple goals daw.
Max pressure. Sus ko, lalo ang pinabahan. Okay. Can you see our slide, bros and sisters?
Sorry.
Slide.
We cannot.
Yes, we can see it. Okay.
We're not using a laptop. We're using a tablet, kaya hindi namin makikita. All we can see is our screen. So, welcome to this series of talks with regards to vices and virtues. And actually, this is part of our of the growth areas that we have identified at the start of the year as part of our theme and our goal for the year of being the salt of the earth and light of the world. If you remember, there are about 5 growth areas that we had identified to grow here in the community. And one of the area is protecting ourselves from the evils of the world. This is actually also a continuation of the talk that Ate Malu gave last year. If you remember, there was a series of talks, but spiritual warfare. But this time around, what Mayat and I discerned is to talk of those evils that we do, or those evils that we're tempted to do, and we would like also to take a more modern and practical approach in as we discuss the evils of this world. Okay. So I will be using this video to show you the overview of the 7 capital sins, which would be the basis of the vices. And actually, there's a corresponding what we call 7 lively virtues that would, they call it actually as an antidote to those against the 7 capital sins. And we researched about this, and we found this very interesting video from the Catholic Central. And pairing couple rin yung magdi-discuss, so it's also interesting. So Sis Flor, can we play the video, please?
Thank you.
Do you ever feel like you lose control? You think you're fine, then you unwittingly end up in the same old situation or doing things you know aren't good for you. Ever thought that maybe you're feeling the effects of the 7 deadly sins?
Like, have you ever gone to the carnival and tried to ride every ride just to prove that you could, but then you got jealous of your friend because he won a stuffed lion for his smoking hot girlfriend? So you spent the whole day on the horseshoe toss trying to win the $1,000 prize, then got so angry from not winning that you ate way too much cotton candy and felt so sick the next day that you didn't care if you missed a huge test and your calculus grade never fully recovered?
As that weirdly specific example illustrates, sometimes there are greater forces at work in the choices we make, and they can leave us with a not so great feeling.
And we know about those forces.
Do we ever?
All 7 of them. So stick around. Might change your life.
Hi, I'm Libby.
And I'm Kai. Welcome to Catholic Central, and today's topic, the 7 deadly sins.
Which you could describe as 7 things that may feel deliciously satisfying in the moment, but won't make you happy no matter how hard you try.
You might even wonder which of these deadlies is going to kill you.
But these aren't those kinds of sins. Catholics consider them deadly because they're deeply rooted sources of other sins. Universal forces that get at your weaknesses and drive everyone to do things they know are not a good idea.
So if you've ever wondered why you seem to be doing the same things over and over, even though you don't want to, the problem's probably right here.
But don't worry, we've also got advice for improving your self-mastery and dealing with the sins. The antidotes.
The antidotes, or remedies, go back to the early church, which defined them in forms of actions to do and virtues to develop. But unfortunately, they do involve effort on your part and are not available for sale, even on the internet.
Let's dive in with pride. Pride's the head sin, the thing we can trace all the other sins back to. It's arrogance, the belief that we are higher than God, the desire to control our lives and the lives of others.
This includes believing that you're essentially better or more important than others, failing to recognize others' accomplishments, and generally putting your own desires at the top of your list of most important things in the world.
The antidote is the virtue of humility.
But that doesn't mean thinking about how bad you are at everything.
True humility means having an honest, realistic sense of your strengths and weaknesses and realizing whatever gifts you do have, God's given them to you. You can start by trying to give these gifts to others, doing good for someone for nothing in return.
Now, second on the list of the 7 deadlies is envy. Oh, we have a caller. How timely.
Oh, hi, Kai and Libby. Wow, you look so successful. Yeah, hi. We're in the middle of doing a show. Oh, I am just so jealous. You know, I always imagine myself doing the same exact thing. I guess you guys just got chosen to do it first. It's okay. I'll just go back to my job that I hate. It pays nothing. Oh, well.
I hope she's okay.
Hopefully the antidote will help, just in case she's watching. But I love you guys.
The antidote to envy is gratitude for what you have and being joyful at the good fortune of others.
Even if their fortune is undeserved.
We've always got to watch out for comparisons. They're deadly. And if we're jealous of someone, maybe try going out of our way to praise them.
Next deadly sin, number 3, anger.
You can't spell danger without it.
Anger isn't just losing your temper.
In fact, anger in itself isn't necessarily bad. After all, righteous anger can lead to positive growth and change when directed towards justice.
But the key with righteous anger is that there's no hatred or desire for revenge, especially against an innocent person. Anger becomes a sin when it comes out of an extreme feeling that things aren't going the way you think they should be.
It can happen between people, groups, or even nations. Worst of all, it festers and grows in a person's heart.
And what's the antidote to anger? Forgiveness. Acceptance of what can't be changed. Letting go of the need to get even and letting something stay in the past while learning a lesson that makes us wiser the next time anger comes around.
And instead of letting things fester, you can actively forgive people the moment they make you angry. But moving on now to the cutest deadly sin in the animal kingdom, sloth.
Actually, I'm being told it's pronounced sloth, but a better word is the Greek and Latin acedia.
Question for both of you. Does any of this really matter? Why do anything when you can just be jaded all day?
Well, it does matter, convenient question asker, because we're both doing the job we've been given to do. When the important stuff stops mattering, we're probably falling victim to acedia, often seen as indifference, lethargy, or commitment phobia. Kevin?
Unlike clinical depression, which is physical and can be treated with medication and therapy, acedia distracts us from spiritual things like prayer and acts of kindness and compassion.
But don't you ever feel sad because any act we do as humans is inherently meaningless since we will never be fully good?
Sure, but the way to get past that is diligence. Try figuring out your mission and what you're born to do with your life. In doing what we know we need to do, a sense of meaning and the energy to pursue it can't be far behind.
Okay, now let's be super diligent and finish out these last 3. Which brings us to avarice.
You might know avarice by its other name, greed, the excessive desire for riches and possessions.
Excuse me, young whippersnappers, but money is essential for the functioning and well-being of society.
Yeah, I mean, we're not saying it isn't.
There's nothing wrong with private property or wealth in itself. In fact, according to the Bible, it's not money that's the root of all evil, but the love of it.
The question is more whether you think that having more and more money, or anything for that matter, will fulfill you or make you happy.
Oh, so I suppose instead of building more hotels, you want me to build homeless shelters for the undeserving?
Well, have you tried generosity?
Of course not. If I give something away, I don't have it anymore, and it's mine. On a separate and completely unrelated note, I feel empty inside. Well, I'm off to the golf course.
Moving on to number 6, gluttony, or as I think it should be called, gluttony. Gluttony is the immoderate preoccupation with food or drink, either quantity, quality, or the timing of it.
Eating or drinking too much.
Only eating fancy gourmet food.
Eating or drinking when a person should be doing other things. If we make food more important than it should be, it can end up ruling our life. If that's the case, we might try asceticism.
Asceticism means taking some time away from sensual pleasure to grow spiritually.
Or focus on the social connections food helps us to nurture, like eating with friends or family mindfully.
And speaking of sensual pleasure...
Lust. The one you probably feel most guilty about.
Yep.
I mean, if we're honest.
Yeah. Now, contrary to what you might have heard, the Catholic Church is not anti-sex.
Catholics believe sex is inherently good and beautiful.
I mean, where do you think big Catholic families come from? Am I right?
But what isn't good or beautiful is turning another person into an object to gratify your desires. Treating another person like a thing.
So there are a few rules, but they're really a way to prevent people from using each other for selfish reasons and to protect what's good.
If you're having trouble with lust, it might be because you're thinking of people only in terms of what they can do for your satisfaction. The antidote for that is chastity.
Did somebody say chastity?
Don't be attracted to anyone ever. Don't look good-looking people directly in the eye.
In reality, it's more than a list of don'ts. Chastity actually is all about the do's. Actively loving another person based on your state in life and respecting your own sexuality. Single or married, it's always about what you're giving, not what you're receiving.
So, that's all of them.
The 7 deadly sins: pride, envy, anger, sloth, avarice, gluttony, and lust.
And the 7 antidotes, or virtues: humility, gratitude, forgiveness, diligence, generosity, asceticism, and chastity. In the end, the sins and the virtues are all about freedom. Freedom to be the best of what we're created to be. These are likely always going to be a problem for you because, congratulations, you're part of the human race. Same as me and you and all of us. Yeah.
Your whole life will probably be a balance between the misery from being influenced by them and the peace from conquering them.
And one way Catholics have to conquer them is through the sacrament of reconciliation and lots of prayer.
And remember, while you're conquering them or trying to, not to be super judgy of others.
I'm Kai, and this has been Catholic Central with the 7 Deadly Sins.
And I'm Libby. Stay lively.
Oh, lively.
You like that?
I get like deadly, but lively
Right,
instead.
because you said it.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Dali lang, we'll share the
So we'll
screen
share
again.
it, yeah.
Hold on.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So, brothers and sisters, so that's the introduction. We opted to use the video instead of us speaking, so as there could be variety. And maganda rin naman yung video. It's simple, informative, and fun. So the way that we're going to go to this series is for this week. This is the introduction, and we're going to deal with one pair of vice and virtue. And then in the next weeks,
Two vices and 2 virtues.
two pairs.
Yeah, one pair. Two pairs.
Two pairs per in the next few weeks. But it will not be consecutive because our talks are only on the first and second Wednesdays of the month. Okay, so expect that there will be talks also on the first and second week of September. Okay. So, ready na ba tayo sa first topic? Ready ka na?
Okay, so
Guess who will discuss pride and humility? Yung mas mataas ang pride ay yung mas may experience sa pride. Kidding aside, it would be me. I'll be discussing about pride. Mayette would take on the
I'll be the virtue.
the virtue. Ako yung vice. Parang he says, she says, sabi nga ni Brother Joel Arellano nung pinoconceptualize na para daw gawin parang Mel and Jay. Doon sa mga nakaabot, no? Mga batang 90s, kilala natin si Mel and Jay. Sige, let's kick this off.
Okay.
All set? We're on time? Good? All right. So let our guiding verse for the first talk on pride versus humility be taken from the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector. So, basahin?
Taken from Luke chapter 18, 9 to 14. I'll read it quickly. To some who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable. 2 men went up to the temple to pray. One, a Pharisee, and the other, a tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed, God, I thank you that I'm not like other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and give a tenth of all I get. But the tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven, but beat his breast and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted.
Right. It's really a beautiful illustration for this for this talk, and there will be 2 focus points or two focus of attentions that we should look at here, and those are the characters of the Pharisee and the tax collector, yung bida dito sa story to. And I guess right now you can relate that what the gospel meant, or if we're going to relate pride, who between the two, sino ba yung exhibits pride dito sa dalawa, the Pharisee or the tax collector?
It's the Pharisee.
Pharisee. Okay. And of course, the one exhibiting humility is the tax collector. And there's the irony about this thing, no? And alam naman natin in the Gospels, really, Jesus Christ was shaking up the beliefs of many people at that time. The Pharisees were the religious elites,
The learned.
the learned, and they were trained since they were young on to follow the law, to follow the law, the religious laws, and they were the religious elites. While the tax collectors are
Outcast
or
during the time.
one of the most hated personalities in the Jewish society at the time, because aside from collecting tax, they are the ones who are collecting tax from the Jewish people, and since the Romans are not giving them on behalf of the Romans, no, and since the Romans are not giving them any salary or compensation, they are allowed to add to the tax being imposed by the Romans, and the top up would be for them to keep. So they are overcharging the taxes so that they can also benefit. So one of the most hated personalities in at that time, yung mga tax collector. But as you can see here, given that kind of given given their positions in society, that didn't matter. At the end of it all, when Jesus was discussing this, at the end of this all, the person whom exhibited humility despite their physical appearance or their position in society, the one who's humble, is the one that is preferred by God and loved by God. And unlike the Pharisee, who was expected to be favored, to be looked at, hindi siya, because that Pharisee exhibited pride. Now, in the next parts of our discussion, I'll be talking more about pride. I'll be speaking about a couple of points here. And I'll be referring to every now and then also to the Pharisee. Si Mayette naman, when she will discuss
I'll try my best.
Humility, of
The
course,
tax collector.
in reference to the tax collector.
Okay.
Okay? Sige. Next. So, I took reference of these pride manifestations from an article that I read, and it says 6 insights on C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity book. And there's a chapter there, chapter 8 yata yun. And the title of the chapter is The Greatest Sin. As you know, C.S. Lewis is one of the well-known Christian writers of our time. And not only that, he's also a very popular writer. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, diba? In the Narnia series. He's the one who wrote that. And during World War II, when Britain was being attacked, bombarded by Germany. One way to alleviate or give hope to the people is through the broadcast in the BBC radio, and the broadcast would include a 15-minute insights exhortations from C.S. Lewis. So parang ganito, nagbibigay siya ng talk. But this one, I picked this up from the website Crosswalk, and he made a further analysis of the article, or not article, but on the specific chapter in C.S. Lewis's book, Mere Christianity. So first point is, sabi nga, no, pride is the mother of all sins. It is the root of many other sins. Kaya in the chapter of the book of C.S. Lewis, he said that pride is the greatest sin. The greatest sin. I mean, title niya, the greatest sin. And I like to share to you another verse in James 4 verse 6. It says, God opposes the proud, but shows grace to the humble. Again, God opposes the proud, but shows favor or grace to humble. Yun, na-record. Thank you. Thank you, Tech Team. And that is in James 4 verse 6. This is very important point. Kalimutan na natin lahat ng examples ko nung sasabihin ko dito. Pero ito lang, huwag natin kakalimutan, brothers and sisters. Pride makes you God's enemy. If there's one thing that God hates, top of the list would be pride. Okay? And why? It goes way back. It goes way back from Adam and Eve, our parents, no? And the sin that they committed, part of the original sin actually is not only about disobedience. If we're going to look at deeper into this, why did they disobey? It's probably because also of pride, because they were promised that once you eat the forbidden fruit, you could be God-like, you could be like God. So that was the motivation for them to disobey. And what happened after that, brothers and sisters? We all know the story. In modern times, I will call this na in-unfriend. In-unfriend ni God si Adam and Eve because of that. That was the, shall I call it also the pet peeve of God against us, against humans, na pride is, pag ito ginawa mo, talagang i-unfriend kita. End of friendship tayo. And that will be the consequence of us. Kaya nga, nasasabi nga natin, di ba, na-mention kanina ni Brother Bert yung budol, no? Na kung among all of the sins, kung magpapabudol tayo, pag nabudol ka ng pride, then you hit it major jackpot na na you will really rouse the anger of the Lord.
While I was reflecting on this manifestation of pride, maybe one of the reasons, brothers and sisters, if you are seeking God's help or seeking specific blessings from the Lord, one thing that we can ask and examine ourselves is, am I currently proud of something? Kasi talagang I think the pride in us blocks God from blessing us and giving us the things that we want for ourselves.
Okay. And repeating the verse, no, God opposes the proud but shows grace to or favor to the humble. Yung word na oppose is very strong. In some other literature or some other version, abhors ang sinasabi. So talagang pride is something that angers God. So let it be a warning. Huwag tayo magpabudol, especially if it is about pride, because it will really trigger the anger of the Lord. Okay, next. A proud person has to be better than anyone else. Going back to the gospel that we read earlier, the Pharisee, no, although he was praying to himself, ang sabi din sa verse, praying himself, and it means, it could mean a couple of things. No? Praying to himself means also na baka tahimik lang yung pinagdadasal na sa loob-loob niya. Buti na lang di ako katulad ng nagdadasal sa likod, makasalanan. So, but praying to himself could also mean that he's not praying to God, but he's just murmuring words to himself na buti na lang di ako katulad nito. Okay. So, the Pharisee is one example of a self-righteous person and somebody who looks down on others. And comparing na buti na lang hindi ako ganito, buti na lang mas okay ako, buti na lang mas magaling ako. Or if we relate this in our daily lives, we encounter this, no? Ayun siya sabi natin minsan na we justify tao lang, no? Tao lang, sorry medyo tao dito yung medyo yung pag magko-comment tayo, like in our mind sometimes when we're meeting a person, when we're talking with a person, or we're listening, or we're even in our offices when we are in a meeting, bakit ako makikinig sa kanya? Mas magaling naman ako. Mas matagal na ako dito sa office, di ba? And mas may experience siya. Graduate ako sa gantong school. Siya ba? Saan ba siya graduate?
Parang there's always, parang when you're proud, you're always competing with someone. You should always be the better person. Kailangan, di ba sa office, okay, let's talk about scenario in the office. Have you ever felt na, or yung may kinaiinis ang kantao? Maybe because you feel threatened from that person. Kasi baka yun ang maybe kakompetensya mo sa sa next promotion, di ba? And this must be the reason for endless, useless discussions of something, because you want to prove that you have the better idea of that compared to that person. And sometimes it's not only in the office setting, also unfortunately also in the family, may competition against an in-law. You want to prove to your siblings or to your parents, your in-laws, that hey, I earn better, I earn more, I am wiser, I am, diba? Unfortunately, ganun nangyari. Or even sa husband and wife, may sense of competition. So these are the deadly manifestations of pride.
Okay, thanks for that. A proud person is never satisfied. Siguro, we can say that this is the root of greed and envy, which we'll be talking about in the next week or so. Pero ayon, when you are proud, you are never satisfied, because nga you're always on the lookout na kung siya merong ganon, ako rin, dapat mas maganda yung akin. Kaya your appetite to be better than someone else, lagi siyang nag-escalate, lagi siyang nag-elevate. Wala siyang katapusan.
I guess here then, Han, nilagay ko to you find it, do you find sometimes, brothers and sisters, difficult for you to receive corrections from other people. Pag napupuna ka ng parents mo, napupuna ka ng kapatid mo, nakakatandang kapatid, or sometimes, pinagsasabihan ka ng anak mo, nangyayari sa akin yon. And then you realize that, it's not easy for you to accept correction. So these are signs of pride. Let's beware. Yeah, next.
Next, a proud person craves for power. Being superior always, and not being comfortable in a position that you are not in control, and that you always want to be in control. We see this we see this kind of pride with many leaders, both leaders kahit saan, in any organization or even in a community. Especially in companies, in corporations, or even in your respective livelihood, respective businesses, that there's you will easily detect somebody who would always try to impose their authority on certain people, on a certain function. So there's always the crave for power. And probably missing the point that in the context of us Christians, when you're given authority, you should be life-giving. Should be life-giving yung purpose mo, no? Not just to have the power, not just to have influence for selfish reasons, okay? But rather, authority and power is there for you to use to give life, to be life-giving.
Okay, next.
Pride makes you vulnerable to the devil. And ito nga, sinasabi, no, gateway to the other sins. And if you remember, there's a beautiful part of the gospel read during Lent, when Jesus was tempted in the desert with riches, with power, with influence. But all of those were rejected. Because hindi nagpabudol. Hindi nagpabudol si Jesus Christ kay Satan during that time, even if the prospects or the what all of those promises would look something very appetizing.
Okay, number 6.
You can be blind by your own pride. Pride is a sin of the heart. Sabi nga dun sa gospel kanina, di ba? When the Pharisee was praying to himself. So I don't think that he was proclaiming na buti na lang yung katulad ng mga makasalanan dyan, yung tax collector dyan. I don't think it's like that. And the warning that we all have to take heed and to look at ourselves is pride is very subtle because it's an internal thing that we process in ourselves and that we manifest. Kasi even if we don't say something, but in our mind, the pride mechanism is working, then we are already, we are already leading to that sin or to that vice. Yung sinabi nga ni Mayette kanina na a pride person never accepts that he is wrong, does not accept correction, and does not change. So those are some manifestations that because they are blinded na, hindi, tama yung paniniwala ko, ito yung paniniwala ko. So I will not listen.
Na-experience yun ba, brothers and sisters, yung galit na galit ka sa isang pinagtatalunan yung isang bagay, either in the office or even at home, even sa spouse, gusto mong ipagmalaki or gusto mong i-prove sa isang tao, dun sa kausap mo, ako ang tama, ito yung perspective ko, ako yung tama. So you want to prove yourself right. And consequently, the other person wrong. So, yun, let's be mindful of that manifestation of pride. Okay, now,
so these are the 6 areas, no? 6 areas manifestation.
Right.
So, but ay nga, inuulit ko, the number 1 is the most important. Makes you God's enemy. So let's be careful.
All right, so now we move on to humility. So what is humility? We all know this, brothers and sisters, but let's look at it as this definition. It is an accurate view of ourselves and our relationship with God that impacts our view of others. So at this point, what I'd like to discuss is the area of yourself, your relationship with God, and your view of others. So we all know that we have our strengths, accomplishments, blessings. So these are the positive things about ourselves. We also have negative things. We have weaknesses. We have our own needs, shortcomings, and our sinfulness. Diba? So now let's look at how do we now relate this with our relationship with God. Now let's see. Ang gusto kong definition ng humility is the Tagalog word, yung kababaang loob at yung pagpapakumbaba. Now, ito in my trying to find an order or a connection between you and your relationship with God. Bakit ba tayo may strengths? Given yan ni God, di ba? Even our weaknesses, the Lord allowed us to have those weaknesses. Bakit kaya? Now, for our strengths and accomplishments, I realized that these are meant to glorify God. When we are humble, when we have kababaang loob and pagpapakumbaba, we know and we acknowledge the fact that everything that you are, everything that we have comes from God. What about now our weaknesses? Those weaknesses are there because it allows us, these weaknesses allow us to depend on God. Depend on what? For what? To strengthen us, to provide us the grace, and to supply our needs. Diba? So now, what happens? My question now to you, brothers and sisters, let's try to focus on do you remember let's say your first plane ride? I'll share with you my first plane ride was when I was already working and when I was working with an airline. Imagine that. So obviously, since it was my first plane ride, I was very nervous and abot-abot ang dasal ko. Hindi ako makatulog. There was a time that every time I would have a trip, whether it's official business or vacation, hindi ako makatulog kasi alam kong hindi pa ako sanay na mag-travel. Makalimutan ko ba yung mga documents, yung gano'n, ano pa ba yung mga nakaligtaan ko. But those needs of mine allowed me to depend God. It allowed me to pray really hard. Now, ang tanong, paano na kung over the time, and it happened that over time, I've gained confidence. What I noticed, brothers and sisters, because I've gained confidence in having my plane ride, and think also about of your first time to do a presentation in important people in the office. Diba you also ask for help from God? But as you grow older, as you gain more confidence, you become wiser in handling these things. Anong nangyari? Are we still dependent on God? Do we still remember our need for Him? That's probably the reason why when you remember that story, Jesus calling the children, diba? What we know is because they have a childlike faith. I think other than having a childlike faith is that childlike dependency on God. He wants that. He craves that from us. So whether we as we become older or wiser and become more accomplished in life, or even when you remember the time nung ang konti pa lang ng kinikita mo sa sinusweldo mo, nung bang lumaki na. My question now, brothers and sisters, with you, who do you depend now? As you gain more strength, as you gain your accomplishment, as you gain your blessing, do you still glorify God? Or have you depended more on yourself more than God? Have you forgotten your need of Him? That's why I believe these weaknesses and or sometimes our shortcomings are necessary to stay. Kasi yung hindi tayo bloated sa pride. These weaknesses and shortcomings and our sinfulness remind us of our need for God. So yun yung gusto kong maintindihan natin between us, our strengths and weaknesses, and our relationship with God. That everything we have, everything that we gain over time comes from God. And let's have that childlike dependence all the time with God. Okay, now, how does humility now impact our view on others? Now, while we have our own strengths, accomplishments, etc., these positive things, now, it has an impact on others as well. So, and how do we now practice humility? Because we have our own strengths, right? And we see other people's strengths as well. When we learn to recognize and appreciate the strengths in others and not feeling threatened, that's a good sign that you are practicing humility. Now, what about your weaknesses, your needs or shortcomings, about the things that you hate about yourself? Napansin niyo ba yon? Kung sino ang mayabang, siya ang insecure, di ba? Pag ginamit natin ang pagiging pag-belittle natin or trying to find fault in others, now we are not practicing humility. We are now practicing being proud. Just like the tax collector and the Pharisee, right? The Pharisee was actually uplifting himself at the expense of another person. Hindi ganun ang gusto sa atin ng Diyos. Ang totoong kababaan ng loob ay pinagpupugay natin yung kagandahan natin, yung mga bagay na kinatutuwa natin tungkol sa ating sarili, at pinagpupugay natin yung kagandahan sa iba. And if we see negative things about others or primarily about ourselves, sometimes kasi when we know our weaknesses, the tendency is to belittle other people. And instead of looking at ourselves on our weaknesses and try to change, we belittle and find fault in others. So, if we want kababaang loob and pagpapakumbaba, let's avoid finding fault in other people. Are we so good so far, brothers and sisters? Are you still with us?
Yes.
Okay. Salamat po. Now, humility at its finest. Ito, I'll go quickly. These are the things that I've learned over time that I'd like to share with you, mga kapatid. Because pride is my favorite sin, I'll tell you. Okay, now how do we now practice humility? First and foremost, gratitude. Gratitude is always the best antidote against yun nga, pag malungkot ka, and if you start thinking of negative things about you, about the things that are happening to you, being grateful for what you have and the blessings that other people receive, you are practicing humility. Now, we also try to honor God. How? And we practice humility by honoring God, because we know that as we earn more, diba? As we earn more, or your influence becomes higher, becomes greater, or you are given more power in the office or more higher position in the office. You know that you depend on God for everything, and you recognize that it's by His grace that you are accomplishing all these things. The other one that helped me, deal with my pride is to compliment more. Dati, mga kapatid, napaka-kuripot ko sa pag-compliment ng ibang tao sa mga magagandang bagay tulad nila, because that shows that I'm a proud person and I'm threatened with other people's accomplishments. So when I tried doing this, when I tried complimenting more people, about the things that I admire in them, it 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 tones down, or at least it burns down. Ano ba yun? Yung pinapatay yung apoy ng pride. Being genuinely happy for the blessings of others that receive helps us achieve humility. Next is we also stop complaining. In lieu of complaining, why not we take some action para, di ba? Kasi when you complain, ano bang nangyayari? Ibig sabihin, you're not grateful. It's not a sign of being grateful for God. You will complain about what's pangit, what's not right, and you start seeing the negative things around you. So we avoid that. Next, we also try to accept corrections. Under this side, mga kapatid, dito ko rin naisip, let's learn to accept corrections. When we want to learn, and accept the fact that we don't know everything, and the craving to learn new things from this talk, and for the talks that we will still have, that means we have an open mind and heart, and that is showing humility. And lastly, I'd like to also emphasize that, we have to learn to apologize. Kami ni Philip, ano sinasabi mo? Kapag kami nag-away, hindi daw ako marunong mag-apologize. Dahil para mabilis ang matapos ang away, ano ang secret? Ano ang tinuturo mo sa brothers?
Ikaw na mag-sorry. Para lang, there will be peace.
Pero sa totoo lang, nahihirapan ako kasi feeling ko I deserve to be amuin and but
parang gano'n, alam kong mali ka, pero sige, napatawad kita, gano'n.
No, but I'm learning, mga kapatid, I'm learning. And, when you learn to apologize, it's also acceptance of your shortcoming, of your mistake, and hopefully the desire to change for the better. All right? That's it, hon. Okay, next steps. Now, mga kapatid, ito, kasi while we were preparing for this talk, we really realized that us, ourselves, we had so many things that we are doing that we are guilty of pride. So, we encourage you, Philip and I, let's encourage ourselves. I mean, let's push for this. Let's do a self-examination starting tonight before we go to sleep. Ano ba yung based on mga natutunan nyo, hopefully sa talk na ito, ano ba ang kailangan nating baguhin? Nasaan ba yung mga manifestation of pride? So that will be our start, your start of your journey towards humility. And ito, palagi ko narinig to kay Ate Malu, go to confession. Go to confession. This is the best way to practice humility. And number 3, of course, for me, we do and practice self-awareness every day. Sa mga babae tohan, ako, I always advise myself to tell myself, yung mga shift of emotions, yung parang happy ka and then all of a sudden, bakit bigla kang nagbago, bigla kang nalungkot or bigla kang na-irritate. Yun, tingnan nyo yun. Baka dahil may nag-trigger na, may mas magandang, may kinompare ka, or may isang taong mas magaling ka, or may isang taong mas magaling sa'yo na bago yung mood mo. So let's do practice self-awareness. And lastly, brothers and sisters, God's goal in our life is, ito nabasa ko to kay Pastor Rick Warren, and it hit me. God's goal is to make us holy, not to make us happy in this lifetime. Hindi yung gusto natin, we look better, we are wiser than other people, and we have nice houses. But really, God's goal in everything that's happening in our lives is to make us holy. Right? So,
let me end this talk with the story from the Old Testament, from the book of Esther, the story of Mordecai. And see, Mordecai is one of the figures in the book of Esther. Esther was the wife of the king of the largest empire at that time. So we call her Queen Esther. Nasa YouTube yata yung movie niya, ganda. Pinunod namin ng lens. So look for it. So Mordecai is the uncle of Queen Esther, well, basically the story is like this. Mordecai merong galit sa kanya si Haman. Haman is the second most powerful person in the kingdom of King Xerxes at that time. And there was a decree that when Haman would pass through, that the people should bow down to him. But in this picture, as you can see Mordecai did not bow down. He was just sitting down. And that hurt si Haman. And he said that, sige, mayabang to si Mordecai. Ano nga palang race niya? So he learned that he's part of the Jew siya. So he made a decree na lahat ng mga Jews would be annihilated or parang that they will be that he ordered them to be killed and pina-approve niya sa king. And in-approve naman ng king. So with that, a couple of things happened. And si Mordecai apparently when he was sitting in the gates of the castle, hindi naman castle yata ang tawag dun sa o dun sa gates, narinig niya two officers were planning to high-ranking of officials of the king were planning to kill him. And si Mordecai, ang ginawa niya, kinuwento niya kay Queen Esther. Sinabi niya na there's this plan. And si Queen Esther did note that and did report that also to the officials. They made an investigation. And tama yung narinig ni Mordecai. So nakulong yung dalawang officials na yon, and they were hanged. Ayun yata yung nasa last one. Now, what happened next is si Haman, sa galit niya, sa puot at galit niya, nung dumaan siya, even with the decree of the king, hindi pa rin nagbow si Mordecai, no? Hindi pa rin nagbow si Mordecai because Mordecai feels na, why am I going to bow to you? So, and galit na galit siya. So he went home after he went home, nagalit siya, sa part of galit niya, sabi, hindi niya ba alam kung sino ako, kung ilan ang anak ko, kung anong accolades ko, kung anong mga binigay na award sa akin ng king, or how much riches do I have. So, yung mga kaibigan niya, binuyo pa siya, sabi, why not do this? Magpatayo ka ng isang 50-foot pole and hang him there. And ask for the permission from the king tomorrow when you meet the king na ihang si Mordecai because he's not following the decree. Okay? So ganon. So ngayon, nung gabing yon, the king could not sleep. And ang ginawa niya, binasa niya yung mga royal records. And nakita niya doon sa record that there was Mordecai who reported the incident to the queen, kaya nahuli yung dalawang officials who plotted to kill him. And tinanong niya, did we reward Mordecai of any sort? Sinabi hindi. Ngayon, apparently, nung nalaman ng king yung umaga na, dumating si Haman. Si Haman siguro sasabihin niya na I want the head of, or gusto kong si Mordecai. But no, ang first agenda ng king is tinanong niya kay Haman is how should I repay somebody who's done this and done this and done this? So sinabi niya, robe him with let him wear your robe, let him ride on your horse and parade him all over the city and tell good things about him. And because Haman was thinking that it was for him. It was for him. So ganun ka yung pride niya, no? So, but after him saying that, sinabi, okay, then do this to Mordecai because he did this for me. He saved me from these two officials who wanted to kill me. So nagulat siya, but he had to follow. So nung inikot niya si Mordecai, umuwi siya, galit na galit naman siya sa sarili niya. Tapos kinabahan siya kung ano nangyari sa kanya. Apparently, he was arrested kasi nalaman ng king about his plot, about the evil that he's planning to do, yung massacre na gusto niyang gawin sa Jewish people. And apparently, si Queen Esther is Jewish, so kaya nagalit yung king na, parang ibig mo sabihin, pati yung wife ko, sasama ko sa massacre. Kaya nagalit ng king. So, instead of Mordecai being hung on that 50-foot pole that was erected in front of the house of Haman, si Haman yung nahang. Brothers and sisters, we'd like to end with that story just for us to visualize how God would oppose the pride and give grace or favor to the humble. So, ayun lang. Let's continue to be mindful about that. That humility really is also the key to unlocking the other virtues. If pride is the mother of all sins, humility is also the mother, or I say the root of all virtues. Yun lang.
Okay,
Thank
nag-overtime kami mga
Sorry,
kapatid.
sorry.
Pasensya na po. Thank
Okay
you.
lang, Philip
Questions
Mayette.
we're ready. Thank you,
O yan.
mga kapatid.
Thanks, Philip and Mayette. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Sige. Do we have questions before we go to